The super hyped Nikon Z7 III sits right in that dangerous Fomo zone. Just plausible enough to keep you holding on. Just mythical enough to feel like a unicorn. As camera enthusiasts who spend way too much time digging into rumors, patents, financial reports, forum whispers, we want to break down what the Nikon Z7 III could be, where it fits, and whether it could actually become the next king of Nikon's lineup. Let's start with what seems to be bubbling beneath the surface. Nearly every camera in Nikon's current full-frame mirrorless lineup has been refreshed. The Z5 II, Z6 III ZF, and even the mighty Z8 and Z9 continue to evolve. But the Z7 II remains frozen in time, still capable but undeniably aging. While its image quality continues to impress, its autofocus and overall responsiveness feel noticeably behind Nikon's modern bodies. Many photographers adore the files the Z7 II produces, yet more and more admit that using it beside a ZF or Z8 exposes its Mesozoic shortcomings. The most commonly discussed rumor is straightforward. Nikon could take the brains of the Z8 and drop them into a lighter, more compact body, similar to the Z7 II or Z6 III. This path would give photographers access to modern AF, improved algorithms, new processors, and significantly better responsiveness. But the sensor question complicates everything. There are two main theories floating around. The first is the photo monster approach, using a 60-megapixel non-stacked sensor, similar to what we've seen in Leica and Sony's high-resolution bodies. This design focuses on detail, dynamic range, and base ISO performance rather than speed or video capabilities. A non-stacked sensor means slower readout and more rolling shutter. But Nikon's lineup already has hybrid and video-first bodies. There's real justification for a camera that doesn't pretend to be an 8K filmmaking machine. The second theory is more exotic. Nikon could adopt a 50-megapixel stacked sensor similar to Sony's A1 line. Paired with Nikon's Z9 class processing, this version of the Z7 III would be incredibly fast, extremely detailed, and frighteningly capable. But that approach risks crashing into Z8 territory and makes pricing almost impossible. The most believable rumor is the practical one. Nikon could take the Z6 III body, including its 5.76 million EVF and IBIS system, drop in a 60-megapixel non-stacked sensor, add the latest processor and autofocus algorithms, offer respectable but not flagship video features, and price it around $2,800. Minimal R&D, maximum impact. Some photographers may not love the articulating screen, but Nikon would likely keep it to avoid redesigning the body. Not sexy, but smart. To understand why the Z7 III suddenly seems realistic again, you have to look at Nikon's pricing curve. After price cuts, the Z6 III now sits around $2,099. The Z8 still hovers above $3,500. That leaves a glaring empty space in the $2,300 to $3,000 range. Canon and Sony do not have this problem. Canon offers smooth steps from RP through R8, R6 II, R6 III, R5 II, and upward. Sony's lineup may be a zoo, but importantly, it offers multiple high-resolution options, squarely in the mid to high $2,000 zone. Nikon's curve, in comparison, spikes early, well before $3,000, creating an abrupt gap rather than a progression. A Z7 III could fill that void perfectly. It would sit above the Z6 III and ZF in resolution and photographic precision while remaining clearly below the Z8 in speed, stacked performance, and professional video features. In effect, it would serve as Nikon's true answer to Sony's A7R line, a camera that declares, "I exist to deliver detail, not frame rates." If Nikon continues its trend of slightly undercutting Sony and Canon price points, a $2,800 Z7 III with modern tech could appear extremely attractive to anyone cross-shopping between brands. Zooming out, Nikon's decisions are not just about specs, they're about strategy. The company has spent the past few years rebuilding segments in a very intentional order. First professional bodies, then mid-range, then entry-level, and now video-focused products. APS-C and lower-priced full-frame cameras have performed well in volume, but have reduced profit margins. Nikon makes more money and maintains brand prestige through high-end full-frame bodies and premium lenses. In that context, the Z7 III is not an obvious business priority. High-resolution bodies cater to a smaller niche: studio shooters, landscape photographers, architectural specialists, fine art creators. A 60-megapixel sensor manufactured in relatively low quantities is expensive. That cost either inflates the price, potentially pushing the Nikon Z7 III into Z8 territory, or kills the camera outright. At the same time, patents suggest Nikon is pushing aggressively into stacked sensor innovation, hybrid global/rolling shutter designs, and faster, cooler readouts. These developments hint that Nikon's long-term focus is on next-generation flagships, not niche, slow readout bodies. And yet there is persistent demand for a smaller, high-resolution, travel-friendly full-frame camera. Photographers who love the Z7 II don't want a Z8. They want something lighter, something more deliberate, something with the soul of a D850 but modern autofocus and image processing. Whether Nikon sees this as a worthwhile niche or an unnecessary detour remains the million-dollar question. This is where things get chaotic, entertaining, and oddly philosophical. Nikon discussion groups are split almost perfectly into two tribes. The first camp insists the Z7 line is dead. Many claim Nikon reps have openly hinted that there will be no Z7 III, and that the Z8 already fills the slot where a Z7 III would logically sit. They argue that the Z8 is effectively the Z7 III, the camera people were asking for, just under a different name. These photographers warn that waiting for a hypothetical camera is wasted time. Buy the Z8 and go shoot, they say. The best camera is the one you already have in your hand. The second camp is emotionally loyal to the Nikon Z7 II. They love the colors, the ergonomics, and the dynamic range. But they also know it's falling behind. They don't want a Z8. They want a spiritual successor to the D810 and D850. High megapixels, superb DR, great AF, and a small, comfortable body. This group spans landscape photographers, architectural shooters, studio artists, and travelers who value portability. Many say they would happily skip stacked sensors entirely if Nikon can deliver top-tier still image performance. Overlaying this debate is a broader conversation about what actually matters in real photography. Some argue that most people overvalue specs like sharpness or megapixels when the output difference is barely noticeable in print or online. Others insist that resolution, dynamic range, and tonal depth fundamentally change how an image can be edited or displayed at large scale. Some photographers want exotic primes and absolute perfection. Others point out that the 180 to 600 mm and 100 to 400 mm zooms already deliver prime-level performance in many real-world situations. Public opinion, in short, is not unified. But the desire for a Z7 III is undeniably present. So, is the Nikon Z7 III a kingmaker or a ghost? If Nikon decides to play it safe, reuse the Z6 III body, add a 60-megapixel non-stacked sensor, upgrade the AF, sprinkle in Z series refinements, and price it at $2,800, it would immediately fill a painful gap in the lineup. It would give photographers a true stills-first body in an era dominated by hybrid marketing. It would finally nudge D810, D850, Z7, and Z7 II shooters into the modern Z ecosystem. And it would directly challenge Sony's A7R philosophy with Nikon's signature color science and ergonomics. If Nikon goes bold and introduces a stacked 50-megapixel mini Z8, then we're talking about a camera that could redefine the high-resolution segment entirely. But that comes with financial and strategic complications that Nikon may not be ready to absorb. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Share with us in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and as always, thanks for watching.